Hello dear chess friends of International Chess School. In this lecture we will continue to discuss about how to defend in a difficult position. An important method to fight against an attack is the method of simplification, the defensive exchanges, in other words. In difficult positions, it is often good to simplify as much as possible. Exchanging material often helps the defender to relieve pressure. If you cannot defend an attack any other way, for example by using the direct or passive defense, exchanging or liquidating into an endgame can sometimes be the best remedy. Besides, exchanging the opponent's active pieces might disorient the attacker, who might persist with the attacking mentality, when it would be better for him to switch to a different approach. This delay in attitude, the fact that the opponent will still fight for a win, can be beneficial for the defensive side. Accordingly, another important element is that the threat to exchange can be strong. For example, the attacker, who generally wants to avoid exchanges, might make an inferior move to avoid the proposed exchange. In this position, White has a very active position. The game was played in 2002 between the grandmasters Navara David with the white pieces and Rustemov Alexander with the black pieces. Especially the bishop from e5 has a dominant position in the middle of the board, and Black realized that in order to defend, he has to get rid of that bishop. In order to realize which attacking pieces has to be traded, we have to analyze the position from the opponent's perspective and try to figure it out which is the piece that creates the most dangerous threats. Actually, the dark square's bishop threatens at some point to trade a knight, and then White will be able to exploit this diagonal. So, let's see how Black can challenge the position of White's impressive dark square's bishop. Knight e7 will threaten to exchange the bishop, but at the same time it will remove a defender, a defensive piece. After bishop f4, knight c5, rook ad1, the knight from d4 is untouchable because of the discovered check, bishop h7, so Black can take on d4, and after knight takes d3, rook takes d3, queen c8, rook g3, White continues his attack on the king's side. Is a very annoying position for Black. You see that the light square's bishop is hitting the air. It doesn't threat anything, while Black's rooks are really passive, while the rook from g3 is extremely dangerous. Of course, Black can search for something else after knight d7. In fact, after bishop f4, which I suggested earlier, black has bishop e4, but this is just a tactic defense. The idea is to deflect the rook from the e file and then to create a double attack with e5, a fork, attacking the knight and the bishop. And if the pawns take, if the bishop takes the pawn, then rook e8, pinning the bishop along the e file. But after knight e7, white has also the possibility of playing bishop g3. It would be slightly better for black that the rook no longer has the lift maneuver, rook d1, rook d3, rook g3. Black deflected the bishop from e5, but didn't solve the long-term troubles. After knight c5, rook ad1, white keeps the pressure. He's attacking, so he has to keep all the pieces on the board. Because of that, because white has a huge pressure, black has to relieve that pressure. And let's go to the initial position. Bishop d6 is the right answer. Only challenging that powerful bishop. Usually, when we are defending, we will try to exchange king's bishop, which is extremely dangerous. But one piece at a time, we will see examples where we are exchanging that bishop. But in the first place, we have to get rid of the most advanced piece from the opponent's camp. Usually, it works to exchange the most advanced piece. Rook ad1, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, and queen b8. Again, now white's queen is the most advanced piece, so black is challenging the queen right away. He's still slightly worse because white has a queenside pawn majority, but as I already mentioned, it is very difficult for white to shift gears and to realize that it has to go for a better endgame instead of attacking the king. Now, if queen e3, then black can continue to defend with rook d8, which leads to a balanced position, or he might start a counterplay on the king side with the knight g4, queen h3, queen f4, queen h4, rook fd8 now, knight e2, and queen g5, exchanging one more time the queens. Black escaped and relieved the pressure. For this reason, probably white realized that he can't avoid the exchange of the queens. He took on b8, queen takes b8, rook a takes b8, and black repelled white's pressure. White played bishop c2. Of course, the bishop on d3 was unsupported. He wants to keep the d file open and to find a better position for the bishop. This allows maybe bishop a4 later on, but the most important idea behind bishop c2 is that it opens the d file. Rook fc8, b3, a6. When the opponent has such a queenside majority, it is always a good idea to stop the advance of the pawns on earlier stages. Now, actually, black is ready to push b6, b5, which means that white has to be careful and to defend the bishop with the knight because of the potential threat b6, b5. Rook d2, rook c5. As long as the knight is defending d7, black isn't afraid of a potential rook penetration on the 7th rank. Rook ed1, king f8, centralizing the king in order to defend d7 and d8. Now f3 would have been a good idea. F3 to restrict bishop's activity. White played bishop d3 back to prevent b5, a5, a3, bishop a6. Again, black is trying to create a blockade to prevent b4 as c4 will be hanging. For example, if white plays b4 now, it would be unprepared. His pieces are hampering each other. And after a takes b4, a takes b4, rook c7, b5, bishop d7, f3, knight d7. An excellent blockade on dark squares would have been realized, and instead of a potential free pawn, white ended up with a huge backward weakness on c4. So with bishop e2, white was careful not to weaken c4. Knight e4, rook c2, rook bc8, f3, knight f6 back, rook dc1, rook 5 c7, b4, knight d7, while black is trying to create a blockade on c5. c5 is the critical square. White is supporting the advance. Knight b3. If white tries here king f2, then e5, knight b3, a takes b4, a takes b4, king e7. If you remember, we have discussed in the first year of study about the rigid pawn structure, the unflexible pawn structure and the flexible pawn structure. In such cases with majorities on different wings, who has the flexible pawn majority will have the upper hand. In this case, we have a dynamic balance. Each side has the possibility of advancing the pawns, and by advancing the pawns also to restrict the activity of the enemy forces. So knight b3 is avoiding e5 with tempo and supports c5 one more time. A takes b4, a takes b4, e5. King f2, a similar position arises on the board. King e7, c5, bishop takes, king takes, b takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes, rook takes c5, and b takes c5. Absolutely necessary. If white plays carelessly here, rook takes c5, he will lose the pawn endgame. How? Rook takes c5, b takes c5, and now not king d7, which would be wrong, since white will have time to reach c4, but king e6, heading for d5, when after king d3, king d5, black is forbidding king e4 and attacks the pawn from c5 at the same time. So it would be a winning position. For this reason, white took b takes e5, king e6, king e3. Now king d5 proves to be a mistake, since after rook d1 the pawn is untouchable. Due to the skewer, rook c1, and after king c6, king e4, the black rook is cut along the d5. So after king e3, black played rook c6, f4, king d5, rook d1, king e6 back, rook c1, king e5, rook d1, with a draw. A very instructive example. An important idea is to start exchanging the opponent's active pieces as early as possible. Don't wait until it's too late. You have to figure it out, which is the key element in the opponent's position. A hint could be provided by the most advanced piece, or usually by trading queens we can simplify the position and relieve the pressure. Till our next lecture, best.